All right, everybody, welcome back. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We're always bringing content from a variety of perspectives. Today, couples EEG brain mapping. So what is brain mapping? How does it work? And how do we use it here for our couples therapeutic interventions? So an EEG is just a really cool way to say brain map. It's 21 sites on your brain, and we're looking at every part of your brain, getting down into the lower brainstem, and then we're running analyses on these data points. You have interactions and things that you do during your brain mapping, so we can understand what your brain is doing when it's at rest or when it's challenged, when you're trying to react to a problem. So we're mapping all of these data points, and we do that for both couples, both partners in the relationship. So a common example for us here is husband and wife. So we'll do our two brain maps of the husband and the wife, and then we'll match those together. And what you find when we do couples therapy this way, we're not actually finding that, oh, he's the problem or she's the problem. What we're actually finding is the system is the problem causing the problems. And when we can decode that and separate that out, man, you can get so much work done so fast. And this whole thing starts with brain maps, moves to timeline and story creation, and then individually working with husband and with wife separately so they understand their background, they understand their story, and we don't have to wonder what we're looking for because we already see it in the brain map and we see it in the timeline story. So we can compress a bunch of time very quickly. We take all of that learning and then bridge that back to the couple sessions. So I'm going to bring in our colleague Josh. You'll see him on the Rebuild website, but Josh, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here for sure. Pretty exciting, this brain map stuff. I mean, it's kind of like, feels like that would have been a great pre-marital counseling, before you get into your relationships going, oh, this is how my wife acts and this is how I act when she acts this way or vice versa. But now we have it, at least, so 25 years in, I'm actually going, oh, this is why I tick my wife off all the time, or vice versa as well. But yeah, it's really cool when we look at this. I know working with you, looking at this, the networks of the brain, it's very fascinating, how important it is to really have some understanding about that. And how much it really does make sense why things can be very triggering or very just, tense for you in relationships. A lot of times, the work that we do, when people come in, we're so focused on that external, right? The dependence of everybody to behave. And my kids would do this, my wife would do this, whatever the case may be. And really having no understanding just our whole makeup in our brain. I think that's such an important piece.
I'm glad you said it that way. What's triggering me right now in a good way is to say, we offer this opportunity to say, I'm not here to try to fix my wife or vice versa. We're actually saying, hey, hold on a second. I want to understand why I do and think the way that I do and think. And then I want to understand my story of how did I even build that brain pattern in the first place? What are the things that really get me going in a good or a bad way? If I can understand that, man, couples counseling is far more tactical and far more effective.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that. When you have a situation in your life where you get really frustrated, we get so focused on what's frustrating me, and we don't really have an understanding to go, what's that inside me? What is it telling me? What am I feeling right here? Because that's where this, the brain mapping is so useful, because we begin to understand, where these things are being kind of held in our brain. And it comes back like, why do we have this whole system? Well, that takes us into the story time of like, okay, this is why, this is where I learned these things. This is why I had to do these things to protect myself, and so it takes a lot of pressure off the relationship, because you realize maybe my spouse isn't attacking me, right? They're actually giving you information. Now, that's kind of a crazy way to think about an argument. Like, this is informative for myself. What do I need to look here? But if you don't have an understanding of your story, like, it makes sense to go, no, it's your fault.
Let's actually say that again, because I think that's a very profound statement. This is information. She's not attacking me, or he's not abandoning me. So let's go right back to that moment.
Yeah, I mean, just, I think about in my own relationship, how frustrated I get. Or I can feel, sometimes if there's an tension between the husband and wife going home, that's unresolved. I'm going home, my body's starting to get a little reactive because I'm like, do I want to apologize? Do I want to have a talk about it? Do I want to ignore her? Do I want to detach? Because she made me mad. That's what I would tell myself. I got to justify this behavior so it makes sense. I mean, we don't want to run around just being pissed off at the world all the time. We need a justification to sit in that. And so externalize that onto the person, that you say you care about the most. But what if that tension is saying like, hey, what's going on in me? What do I need to look at here? Because in all reality, we've talked about this a lot, right? This wound down here that is controlling the system, the brain, all these things. And what it's doing is protecting you. And so she's telling you this information and saying, hey, look here, look inside you.
And then when we talk about the looking inside, when we can get it to be information versus attack, one of the really cool things that we get to see in an EEG, your brain map, we get to look into the default mode neural network, we get to look into the parietal lobe, and we get to look into the frontal lobe. And these two parts of your brain tell us the story that you tell yourself about you. So when you get into this reactivity where you feel like I am really upset with him or her, and we say, hold on a second, let's go back into self. Why is that so reactive for you? We can already see it in your brain map, so we're already looking and guiding. So you don't have to figure out what's the best thing to say to work on yourself. We already have a sense of it, so we can already get you into these places so that you can really get right down to the core of this information.
Yeah, and just, think about from a marriage family standpoint, like, how many of those sessions are just around resolving the tension? Like, hey, maybe we should communicate better. Maybe there should be an apology. And I'm not saying those things aren't needed, but what if it's like we gather intel from that, to be able to explore ourselves and go, oh, this is why this bothers me. This is why, when my wife, doesn't speak to me, I feel abandoned. I feel lonely. I feel sad, because you get to ask those questions. What part of you is telling you that? It's like, well, man, when I was, 10 years old, man, my parents left me. So now is it really a wife's problem? Or is it, hey, somewhere back here in my past, man, like I learned to protect myself when I feel lonely. I get reactive when that wound gets triggered.
So just right there, I get triggered and reactive and hurt when my wife does something simple. Okay, so we're just using that framework. Because you started with your brain maps and then you moved into building out your timeline. This is your life timeline. We have a software app that does this with you. But then when you're describing how much it hurt when he did this or she did that and you got triggered, and then you look back into the timeline with the question, where did you learn to be so reactive to that system?
Right. Yeah, because, I love the way we do the timeline. It's not testimonial, right? And there's a space and place for that. For us as clinicians, this is more systematic. We're trying to understand the pattern, the origin of certain things, and when these moments happen, what did we learn to do in that moment? Because if we can gather that intel, we begin to understand what's happening in the current moment that we're living in, and so like that then tells us, well, we need to go right here and go, what do we need right here? What did you actually need when you felt abandoned? What did you actually need when you felt sad? Those moments. And we create that opportunity. That's why I love what we do. We kind of create that opportunity where you can go back and kind of heal that piece, which is healing current self. Because I don't know how you say it, but in your physics world deal, like, right, we have these two things that happen in different timelines, but it feels current.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is two things, quantum entanglement and this abstract theory called Jinn particle, Jinn, Jinn particle. And this is basically saying, because two things can be connected outside of time and space, I can have a trauma wound from when I was 10, and that is active, alive, and impacting me in the present, and I'm 50. And if I'm in the present at 50 and I go back in time metaphorically in therapy and heal my 10-year-old wound that I discovered is actually the driver to most of all my marital dysfunction, then in the present moment, healing the past creates a future that I desire in the moment because the past is resolved. And that's a complicated, deranged sentence. But that's trauma. It's sneaky. And that's why we really, really enjoy brain mapping to timelines individually so you can understand and heal self so that when you come together, you're not working on current issues with unresolved past. And we can do it in an efficient time.
I think a good example is just take something pretty severe like infidelity. I mean, that is a current painful moment for couples to go through. And it's really hard to sit in that and let it speak to you, right? Because what do you want to do when I want to shut down, I want to attack. I mean, and it's painful. I mean, not to take away from the excuse of it happening, but just sit in that for a second. Like if we can, create that space where we can sit in it, what is it actually trying to show you? What is really being attacked? Is it the infidelity, or is there a piece back here that like, man, this really hurts because I was abandoned back here? Like, and that's a hard example, but the truth is that's what trauma, it does, man. It really creates these protectors, to protect self, right? And so when we have these major events, it really is opportunity to find those wounds because let's be honest, like infidelity doesn't happen overnight. There's space that's, has grown between a couple, right? There's distance. I don't feel disconnected. And these aren't justifiable reasons. My point to that is the infidelity piece could be the access to the wound that's back 10-year-old self. Why I don't have a good, healthy relationship now. That's a hard one to sit in. But that's how we trace stuff like that back.
No, it's a fantastic way to say that, because then we can say with all empathy applied, it makes sense why this just disastrous event in your marriage and in your life is so significant. Like it makes sense for the act itself, certainly, but it's amplified in a proportion that is hard to even put on a nonlinear scale because of these two backgrounds. And that's again why we love brain mapping to timelines, because that gives us access to these big drivers underneath. And we use a lot of emotional focus therapy approaches because we got to get underneath why this present really significant thing is so significant, because we know it's just never that one thing.
Right. It's never one thing. But if we don't have these moments that create opportunity, and I'm not, trying to discredit any painful experience, but man, there are windows into something deeper, right? And if you could have the courage to trust that, man, you could unlock something so powerful. From a spiritual standpoint, I mean, I think that's how God kind of works, right? He says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. Like, that's really what he's talking about. When you experience something, like, do you have the ability to sit in it, And that's why our approach is so unique, because we're going to use those moments to access something back here.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so let's actually shift as we end this quick chat here today. If there was just one thing that you would want a husband and a wife to know going into this, that they won't believe at the beginning, but at the end of that experience with you, Josh, they would say, now I know. Like, what would be that thing?
That's a tough question to answer, but I just think about your just current status of any relationship, good or bad. Can you go from bad to good or good to great? What would it take to get there? And so like going through this experience, just take a good relationship to be able to come out and go, wow, it can be even greater. Man, what a gift. Why wouldn't you want to explore that? Why wouldn't you want to honor that for yourself, for your spouse? Why settle for just status quo? Because things are okay. The boat's not rocky, because all you're waiting on is just enough pressure to realize there's been problems here for a long time. And I think that's the cool thing about it. You don't have to wait till the boat gets rocked, right? Do this for the betterment for yourself, your spouse, your family. This is such a bigger impact than just you as a person. So walking through an experience like this, man, I wish I had the learning 20 years ago. I'm not going to say I would have valued it and taken care of it like I should have, but I guarantee at some point I would have gone back to that and begin to understand like some of the issues and struggles I've had to face in our marriage. And man, like I wouldn't have wasted a lot of time. or you can just start right now and let's start living. So.
Okay, Josh, thank you. That's amazing. We have this theme here at Rebuild. We don't like to waste time. We don't rush you through your process by any means. We just bring a collection of sophisticated tools and systems so that it's very obvious and it makes sense. But of course, that would be a thing for you and you would be reactive to these things. Of course you would. Let's go back there, resolve that so that you can respond, because the meaning and purpose of your marriage has been revealed. And where you're going has a direction, and it has a name, and it has a destination. Because we don't waste time just trying to figure out what to talk through and heal. We're going to do your brain maps so we know where you're at and understand the system that you created. We're going to work through timeline individually so we can see, yeah, of course this would be a hard thing right there. And that's not even what she meant. That's how you interpreted it. And this is not discounting the pain, as Josh already said. This is just saying it's data. Let's look at it. And man, you can move forward.
Yeah, I was just in there thinking, like, if anything, just do the brain map. Just look at how y'all interact, like to get better, to get healthy. And it's fascinating, like to think about, like, we can actually take information from our pain to make ourselves better. Right?
Say that one more time.
We can take information from our pain to make our situation better. Yeah.
Okay. Rebuild, thanks for joining us. As always, we'll look forward to a little bit later when we get another idea in the middle of a busy day and we say, hey, let's just go upstairs and talk about this. And here we are.
That's right. What an opportunity.